And I would also ask, just from a logistical point of view, if you are not speaking, if you could mute your phones, please. We'll try to have quite a few folks on today, and we'd like to minimize background noise as much as possible. So with that, this is a webinar. This is actually part of a series that we have been having as part of the City Energy Project. I think most of you are familiar with CEP. But for those of you that aren't, this is an initiative that is being done in partnership with IMT and NRDC to work with 10 of the leading cities around the country and help them develop some customized, locally responsive energy policies to really push the needle and help improve energy efficiency of their buildings and create jobs and do all the things that we know energy efficiency can do. So we've been going through a number of different technical and strategic topics each week. This particular webinar, we've invited a lot of cities and other jurisdictions outside of CEP as well. So we'll certainly have a few other folks that will be on the call today listening in and hopefully asking a few questions. And the reason we've included them is that today's topic is all about benchmarking help centers, hearing from a couple of the experts that have been doing this for the last few years. Benchmarking health centers are really one of the most critical aspects of being able to have a successful benchmarking program to provide the kind of support and expertise so that building owners and others can be successful. And it can also be one of the largest programmatic costs. So there's a lot of different ways that this can and has been approached by various cities. Could be just using part-time city staff when necessary to respond to messages and requests from owners, or it could be a much more robust, fully staffed help center. So today we're going to hear from Adam Mays with Elevate Energy and Dan Price with Northwest Energy Efficiency Coalition, who are both managing third-party health centers supporting Chicago and Seattle, respectively. It'll be great to hear their insights on what has worked well, what hasn't worked well, what kind of resources are necessary, and really what role a benchmarking help center can play in ensuring the success of these benchmarking programs. So reminder again, if you're not speaking, please keep your phone muted so that we don't have a lot of background distractions. And with that, let me go and hand it over to you, Stan, to talk to us about what you've been doing in Seattle.
Great, thanks, Jason. Can you hear me fine?
Or echoing a little bit again.
Sorry, let me let me know if that gets better or worse. Thanks, everybody. Please, yeah, great. Pleased to join you all and talk a little bit about our experience with the City of Seattle. As Jason mentioned, the Northwest Energy Efficiency Council is the a contracted organization with the City of Seattle to operate the help desk functions, which we've been doing since the original implementation date for Seattle's ordinance. And just very briefly, NEEC is a nonprofit industry association that represents companies that provide efficiency products and services in the Northwest. We're based in Seattle, and we're been a long-time proponent of benchmarking ordinances, certainly here in the Northwest and around the country. I just want to spend a little bit of time. I think Adam and I are going to try to limit our comments to about 15 minutes each, so we have plenty of time for question and answer at the end. So let me begin by just sort of covering some of the basics in terms of both the Seattle ordinance and how we're composing things with the help desk. Seattle has one of the older energy benchmarking and reporting ordinances in the country, with reporting beginning in 2012. The particular ordinance in Seattle covers both multifamily properties and commercial buildings that are greater than or equal to 20,000 square feet. So in the Seattle context, that's about 3,200 buildings that are covered by the ordinance. Obviously, with the addition of multifamily, that significantly increases the number of covered buildings in that jurisdiction. In Seattle, there's basically a single electric utility provider, Seattle City Light, which is a municipal utility, a natural gas utility, Puget Sound Energy, and then a district steam company that provides steam energy to a few of the buildings in the downtown core. In each case, all three of these utilities do provide automated data uploads for the customers, and we'll get into that in a little more detail in a second. As I mentioned, the help desk staffing was contracted to the Efficiency Council, and at the beginning of that period, we had 3 FTE committed to this project. We've now transitioned that number over the period of time to 1.5 FTE, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about the progression of those staffing numbers. When we first began to work with the city in relationship to putting our staffing plan together and our approach to providing the help desk, we sort of, here's some of the basics. We got to recognize that we were going to need full-time availability of staff on a Monday through Friday basis during the workday. We needed somebody to be an overall kind of manager to bring the staff together, coordinate, and do the collaborations to which we have worked very closely with the City of Seattle staff. We would have a dedicated live phone and email support, so people would have an 800 number to call, or actually a local phone number, not an 800 phone number, so these are local folks, but a local phone number to call, as well as an email address to which they could address questions and problems. So we designed it to be one-on-one assistance. That is, we would take individual callers and emails and work with them. Beyond that, we would actually do side-by-side work by having both drop-in help. There were some regular drop-in hours. We've now transitioned that to available by appointment, as well as doing some workshops and other information sessions. We developed a tool for tracking and reporting the inquiries. We wanted to get a notion of both how many people are calling, what are they asking about, so the basics that you would do in relationship to tracking both call volume as well as the nature of the inquiry. We needed to get staff also trained on a variety of different utility processes, because automated data exchange was a component for the utilities here, and each one of the utilities had a separate process around which customers could request those data uploads. We needed to familiarize ourselves with their individual processes and changes to those processes that they've made over the period of the last 3 years. Beyond that, we wanted dedicated utility contacts at each of the utilities so that we could streamline the assistance we were providing to building owners by being able to go to a direct utility contact to answer questions that we would have. So our help desk services then evolved to be, again, this email and support. We dedicated ourselves to a goal of a 24-hour turnaround. That is, when people called or left us an email, we tried to get back to them within a 24-hour time period. We'll talk a little bit about the rhythm and volume of things and how well we were able to sort of meet that standard. At the core of things, however, we were providing technical assistance largely in 3 areas. Information about Portfolio Manager, the tool itself, how people could get set up and completely and fully complete all of the fields necessary in Portfolio Manager. We worked with people with the Utility Data Exchange. I'm old school, so I still tend to call it ABS, or Automated Benchmarking Services, but I know that term is now segmented to be Utility Data Exchange. And then finally, in relationship to the reporting, the actual documentation that with the City of Seattle that a particular building owner has complied with the ordinance. We needed to communicate and coordinate very closely with utilities, problem solves in relationship to data exchange, work with owners in relationship to those communications, but then also providing information and education. People would frequently call up and want to know, why is this policy in place? What's the value of it? Why should I comply? They wanted to know information about, well, what sort of figures of merit come out of benchmarking. What is an EUI? What is an Energy Star score? So we would spend time with folks providing that kind of basic information and education. As the help desk services have evolved, we've moved also now to more proactive outreach, where we're working on trying to make sure that folks understand their compliance status, that they get in compliance with their annual reporting requirements, and that we ensure that there's the highest possible data quality in their portfolio manager accounts. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. Again, we instituted some dedicated drop-in hours and some hands-on workshops in order to be more granular in relationship to the help and assistance we're providing to customers. The results of this over a period of time have, I think, have been good. We had an evaluation done or the City of Seattle had an evaluation done by Resource Media for our 2013 activities, and I just clipped out a couple of things out of their evaluation report. The key stats here being our help desk staff really did engage with quite a number of the buildings that were covered by the ordinance. So you can see, you know, well over half, 2,400 out of the 3,800 or so that were required to comply. In 2013, were receiving some sort of assistance from us. You get a sense about call volume. Our help staff fielded, you know, nearly 10,000 calls and emails in 2013. So you can do the simple math to figure out what that was in relationship to kind of monthly averages. I'll talk a little bit more about rhythm in just a second. And we did our best with a pretty high call volume to meet the 24-hour turnaround. Sometimes folks had to wait a little bit longer if we were just really overwhelmed during any period of time, but we did try to be as responsive as we could possibly be. The net of that in 2013, you see the stat from the report here, 91%. That actually climbed in the City of Seattle, achieved virtually 100% compliance rate. There was a small number of buildings, 99% ultimately applied ordinance after we did some proactive outreach to those who were out of compliance.
Stan, excuse me, this is Jason.
Just quickly into some details. As I mentioned, the call and email volume varies. It was anywhere from 500 to even up to 1,500 of these per month, and the rhythm of those were basically tracked compliance deadlines as well as any sort of outbound communications that the city would have with building owners. So reminders that they would send out, or you know, proactive communications about the availability of the help desk would always create this sort of bow wave of additional activity. So we did have peaks and valleys in relationship to the contacts that we had at the help center, to which we had to adjust. We tried to use, and I put slow in parentheses here because I don't know that any time it's ever really slow, but slow periods to do more proactive outreach on data quality. So to the extent that as the city did data analysis and looked at the outliers in relationship to building performance by occupancy type, we could identify outliers in both the low and high energy use category, and help staff actually proactively out to those folks to talk to them a little bit about their accounts, get an idea about whether or not there might be missing meters, inaccurate data, bad square footage, the kind of stuff that folks on the call I think would normally gravitate to in relationship to proclivity for errors within the account. All of that stuff done in really close coordination with the city's Office of Sustainability and Environment, who operate the benchmarking program and the ordinance, and have been marvelously talented and very great with here in the city.
Excuse me, Stan, I don't know if you can hear me, but Stan, you're starting to cut out a little bit on the audio again.
Yeah, I'm on that because the accept the passcode. So I'll do my best. I have the microphone turned up.
Okay.
I know I'm getting a lot of feedback noise, Jason, from other folks that they may be overriding me because a number of participants are not muted. So let
Okay.
me say a word about compliant data quality. I think one of the things that I think is most important, and I'd be interested in getting Adam's perspective on this, is our help desk staff has really taken the attitude that we're working with owners to really solve problems, not just answer questions. Many times we'll get inquiries from owners with specific questions, and in reality, sometimes they don't even really know the right question to ask. So we've worked really hard to make sure that where our focus is really trying to solve a problem, to get people to compliance, as opposed to just answering a specific question that they have. And we think that's a really key aspect and orientation to take if you really want to get to a high level of compliance. We really needed real-time access to user accounts, which we were able to do through the city system, so that we could work with an owner. We could go directly with them into their portfolio manager accounts and view in real time particular problems or troubleshoot issues. Patience is a virtue. We would sometimes have to deal with customers multiple times over in order to get them from where they are to where we wanted them to be, which is in full compliance. People are oftentimes very frustrated and sometimes angry, and so the staff itself has to be very patient and is helpful as we can be to diffuse particular situations. I mentioned proactive outreach to non-compliant owners in the whole notion of improving data quality by identifying outliers and trying to be proactive about it. We're also in the mode right now with the help staff of trying to move from simply thinking about compliance to thinking about helping building owners actually take action based on the information that they're receiving from actually benchmarking their buildings. So we're trying to help owners identify opportunities. We're making referrals to the electric and natural gas utilities, referrals to our market transformation organization, the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. We have taglines at the end of our emails. We're spending time with people on the phone, encourage them to reach out to other information sources. The city is also doing annual data analysis now and producing reports which are allowing the owners to actually take their building performance and compare it to like buildings in the city in which they reside, and we think that's a really powerful tool of performance to motivate people to action. Just a word or two about funding before I close. The funding for our particular help desk initially came through grant funding, a couple of different, including the IMT. Thank you very much, Jason. But others as well. However, currently the help desk is funded now through a cost share by the two electric and natural gas utilities here in Seattle, Seattle City Light and Puget Sound Energy, which we hope is an indication of the increased value proposition that the utilities are seeing in getting owners to benchmark and to look at their energy data. So my final slide here is in relationship to lessons learned. There's a lot of lessons to be learned. We can talk a little bit more about that through the call. But in our experience anyway, early reporting years definitely need more technical assistance. The ordinance is brand new. There's a lot of really basic questions. And so having as much assistance early on makes sense. I have personally been surprised, and I think others, however, that the technical assistance needs don't diminish quite as rapidly as I might have anticipated. This isn't just like paying your taxes every April 15th. You kind of get around to it. We're finding that there is still technical assistance needs even multiple years now into Seattle's ordinance. Some of those needs change over time, but they certainly haven't gone away. The technical assistance also correlates with high compliance rates and good data quality. So the better your TA outreach is, we think the higher your compliance rates are going to be and the better that data is going to be in the individual accounts. And utility data exchange services present their own technical assistance needs. We think utility data exchange really does help in relationship to data quality, and it can be a time-saving tool for building owners, but the connection and collaboration between the owner and the utility in order to set up data exchange does present their own technical assistance needs, and those should not be discounted. And finally, the technical assistance volume, it will rhythm with the with reporting needs and proactive outreach communications. So as you communicate with building owners, it's going to put increasing pressure almost immediately on your technical assistance staff, commensurate with that. So that's the end. Let me end, Jason, and I'll turn it back over to you or to Adam to hear about Chicago.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. Appreciate that. So I'm going to go directly to Adam now. We're going to hold off on questions till the end, and I forget to mention at the beginning, but if you could go ahead and send your questions in the chat box within GoToMeeting, that'd be great. We've got a bunch of people on the call, actually, and I'm afraid we'll be stepping all over each other if we just try to open up all the voice lines. So if you could send your chat questions in, we'll definitely try to get to all of them at the end of the presentation. But for now, I'm going to turn this over to Adam. Should see a request there in just 1 second. Great. So you should be live, Adam. Tell us all about what's going on in Chicago.
My pleasure. Can you see my screen and hear me all right?
You look good. Thank you.
Excellent.
You look and sound good.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks, Stan. I'm pleased to be here to tell you, give you a glimpse to all the work that we've been doing in Chicago to help implement the Chicago Energy Benchmarking Ordinance. You know, we're really standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to this, you know, following in what the work that Stan, you've done there, and all the other cities that have implemented, some of which I see are on the call. So thank you all very much for helping us to do this effectively. So for those of you who are not familiar with Elevate Energy, we are a nonprofit based in Chicago, and we run a number of programs around energy efficiency, all dedicated to providing smarter energy use for all. And in building these over the last few years, we built a robust help center capability, which helped us to come and serve this role here in Chicago. And so when it comes to our mission of smarter energy use for all, it's no surprise that we are very excited about benchmarking and very excited about benchmarking implementation as well. So I hope that I can impart some of my enthusiasm to you and move that through help you move through the process. So quick update on Chicago. Our ordinance covers commercial, municipal, and residential buildings over 250,000 square feet. They report every year, and then we were one of the first cities to implement a data verification piece where the data has to be verified by a licensed professional every 3 years. So as you can see here, it's a 3-year rollout, starting with the very largest commercial municipal buildings. This year we're looking to have the smaller cohort of commercial as well as the very largest residential, and finishing up next year. So last year, again, was our first year of compliance. We had 348 commercial and municipal buildings report, about 11% of energy consumption. Very pleased to get over 90% compliance, and our energy data was in line with other cities that we've seen. And you can see there, that's the website where you can find the report and, of course, all the other materials that I'll be referencing today when it comes to building support. Okay, great. So how did we get this done? Well, it wasn't just the city, and it wasn't just us. The city pulled together a working group to move forward on this, led by C40. Many of you know Jamie Ponce, and then we were very pleased to have Amy Jewell as our city energy project staffer come on board this year. Also worked very closely with our local U.S. Green Building Council, who manage the training and have lots of volunteers. And I think that's definitely one key takeaway that I would encourage you to look into is connecting with the local USGBC chapters. Just in terms of coordination, we typically have a weekly check-in call and work very closely to make sure that we are all talking and all on the same page and clear on next steps and schedules and that sort of thing. So it really is a close coordination to get all the work done. All right, so I just want to share with you some of what I've learned and come to see as the implementation instrumentals when it comes to benchmarking ordinances. As you can see, I'm a terrible speller, but just basically the six steps that no matter where you are in your benchmarking ordinance, I think you will need to take care of. So you need to identify buildings. You need to notify those owners and managers that they need to comply. You need to train them how to benchmark. Despite how well you train them, you will still need to support them in their benchmarking. You need to report on the findings, and then, of course, what we're most interested in is to motivate energy efficiency action. So for today's presentation, I'm going to focus mostly on identifying buildings, notifying them, and supporting them, since those are the main tasks that we at Elevate took on in the last few years as the Help Center. So one way that I've thought about this is it's a major data project. There's a lot of data in a lot of different places that all needs to get to the city and then back out to the building owners and managers so that they can take action. So this is our data architecture. You can see centered around the Help Center, the Salesforce, and I'll walk through a few bits of this as we move through the presentation. But it's also very important to remember that it's not just some impersonal system. They're the people behind the system, like our folks in the call center you can see up there, building owners and managers, the tenants, the utility companies that are all part of the system, and that's what makes it work. Okay, so let's talk about the first step in identifying buildings. Here you can see that I've identified this building as the Radio Flyer Factory in Chicago, which is one of the things that I learned in the process that they are based in Chicago. So as you can see here, we at Elevate took on the task of combining several different data sources in order to identify buildings that have to comply with the ordinance. So we took assessor data, commercially available CoStar data, and also Department of Water data that the city made available to us, which had some great contact information. Our data architect did some matching and combinations to come up with our list. But then we were very focused on making sure that that was the right list, that buildings we thought were residential were indeed residential, or buildings we thought were buildings were. And so we did quite a bit of what you see here, of looking up buildings in Google Earth and just making sure that they exist or that they look like they're residential, that sort of thing. So that was our first task. Now, once we identified those buildings and the people connected to them, we had to make sure that they knew that they needed to comply. Like other cities, you can see here we sent our letters. You can find a sample letter on the website. And then we also were very proactive, just like Stan in Seattle, in reaching out to owners, especially focusing on the large portfolios so that we could make sure that we got large chunks of buildings in one call. It's a very, very important thing to do. As you can see there, we help, putting it all together through our Salesforce system, helped put together the mailing lists, and also helped us target which buildings we needed to notify, which buildings we were in contact with, which buildings we needed to get in contact with in order to effectively drive compliance. Of course, you have to do a lot of training. This is an example of a checklist that we put together, and the one thing I'll say is that you just definitely have to make sure that your Help Center staff are trained as experts in the system, in all the systems involved, so that they can help answer and troubleshoot any questions. Okay, so here is our call volume. We had over 800 emails and calls, and you can see our peaks and valleys. You can definitely expect to get lots of calls when you send any kind of notification. Especially as you get closer to the deadline, and especially as you start sending more angry, threatening letters like you're not in compliance. and we had an average of about 33 calls and emails a week, but again, having some pretty significant peaks and valleys. Typical call time, I saw there was a question on that, about 6 minutes, and about so total about a week of call time. So just to give you an idea of how people might interact with us, so the building's owners and managers could talk to the help center directly, call and ask questions and get answers and give us data about their buildings. They can use our update and exemption process. This year we're inaugurating a series of online web forms, which we are optimistic will automate much of the data transfer to come, since we're expecting a large increase in volume. And then, so the main thing building owners do is get their data from Peoples Gas and ComEd through their data aggregation system, put that into Portfolio Manager, we run that through our QA/QC process, and input into Salesforce for further analysis. And again, to my point of people in the systems, and to echo Sam's comment, very important to have direct links between the help center and the folks at the utilities who are running the system. So a few more details. Again, over 800 calls and emails last year, mostly, again, wanting compliance details or to tell us, you know, my building isn't covered, I don't own this building, what is my building ID? Got a lot of calls after violations went out, got a lot of calls about exemptions. And then we mostly heard from property managers and service providers. Service providers definitely being an important stakeholder group to be proactive with, especially making sure that they know that you're there, that they know how to benchmark correctly, since they will probably be doing a large portion of buildings in your city. One important thing that we've been working on is sort of our rubric of building statuses. So thinking about, you know, where is the building in the process, and that's important because it necessitates, you know, what's the next step that you want to take with them. So just quickly running through this, you know, if a building has submitted data, that's great, that's where you want them to be. But if they comply, then you want to be moving them towards energy efficiency. But they may have some problems, either in compliance or quality, which I'll touch on, and then you need to get them to fix them. If they need to submit, then, you know, that's the next step, and it's important to understand where you are in contact with them, because that's a little, you have to worry a little less about them. If you're not in contact with them, you think about doing outreach. And if you don't have any contacts at a particular building, that's when you might need to do some research to figure out who do you need to contact at each building. And then, of course, there are the buildings that are not covered, either because they're exempt for whatever reason in your ordinance, that they're not covered for whatever reason in your ordinance, or perhaps they're a building that you thought existed but doesn't actually exist, which may be the case. Okay, so on the report, again, you want to do that, and what we really tried to do was to provide really high quality data control so that you can have the best report possible. So you can see that when it comes to data quality, we divide it into two categories. There's compliance issues, which are more severe than data quality issues, which are more fuzzy. So in compliance, you know, every building has to provide 12 months whole building data, enough to generate a site EUI, and then again have verified information. Now, when it comes to data quality, this is because these are fields where a building may or may not be able to generate this. So there are legitimate reasons that a building can't generate a weather normalized source EUI or an ENERGY STAR score, which were the key metrics in our analysis. And then we also want to look for suspicious or outlier data, and you can see our guidelines there for what we're looking for. Those are based on what we saw last year. And just to quickly answer a question that came in, we did have communications go out when data comes in that either says, yes, you've complied, or you've submitted data, but you have a compliance issue, or you've submitted data and you have a quality issue. So we do try to close that loop as quickly as possible. Okay, so what did it take to do this? We did some time tracking and ran the numbers, and it turns out pretty similar to what Stan talked about. So I think maybe we're coalescing around some recommendations on how many FTEs or FTE equivalents it might take. Again, it comes out to about a team of 3, maybe a project lead and a help center, and then definitely if your help center is taking on the more data management and types of things, you'll need a specialist there. And so this just brings it down to FTE equivalents. We at Elevate took advantage of our entire range of staff so that we could take advantage of any specialists. So I was the lead as a project manager, but then we could take advantage of our data architect and Salesforce admins. We use Portfolio Manager extensively in our work with buildings, so we were able to take advantage of that information. Again, we have a great help center staff and management, so they were instrumental in providing high-quality customer service and then taking advantage of our research and communications. We as well were supported through grant funding, again, thanks to IMT and others, and then also from local foundations that have committed to energy efficiency and sustainability in the past. So I hope I've got you all as excited about benchmarking help centers as I am every day, and I look forward to discussing it further and answering your questions.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Great presentation, and I like your creative use of poor spelling. That was well done. Instrumental in our solutions. So I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to throw out to kind of start the discussion. Then we've got quite a few that have come into the chat line already, which is great. But one of the things I'm curious to hear more about from both of you is how to scale these sorts of approaches up. Obviously, it can take a lot of resources for every city to do this, and we're getting more and more cities and states coming on board with these programs. Congratulations to Atlanta and Portland for both passing ordinances this week. Very exciting news. But what I'm curious to hear from both of you is, what are some other ideas on how to scale this level of support up and still provide the kind of services that building owners need? For example, Adam, it sounds like what happened in Elevate is you already had a robust help center with lots of different skill sets to draw on, so you only needed to use a small portion of each person's existing time to support this. Another solution might be, as opposed to each city having their own help center, maybe more regionalized approaches where cities are banding together and scaling up that way. But I'm curious, if either of those ideas make sense, or if either of you have other ideas on possible solutions that might make sense going forward to provide high-quality service with as few dollars as necessary.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Jason. It's a great question, and one that we've been thinking about. There's clearly an opportunity cost associated with getting your systems in place and getting staff sort of trained and knowledgeable and skilled in relationship to providing the technical assistance services, and having to replicate that over and over again across municipalities or states or larger areas clearly misses some potential economies of scale. So, some possibility for regional approaches. There's clearly time zone issues here, and so thinking about moving across time zones may provide some additional challenges in that regard. And I think there's also some notion of sort of local flavor and local knowledge of resources and even building stock owners and politics, et cetera, that they come into play in this question as well. And so how effectively you can accommodate some of those issues as you would scale this up over a larger geography is something that I think may not be insurmountable, but is an area that would likely need additional discussion.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This is Adam. Yeah, I think one way that to scale and that we're experimenting with now, just in scaling to a larger volume, is through automation. I think certainly in our systems there's a lot of hand holding and manual processes, which can be important for that personal touch. But I think there's a lot of things when it comes to, again, sending emails and reminders and data and stuff that you could take advantage of automation in some sort of customer relationship management system. So I think investing in that and then being able to roll that out across other cities would be really helpful.
Jason, can I tag on to that? Because I think that's a great comment, Adam. And when we did the resource media evaluation that I mentioned in my presentation, I know they called our style, which was particularly sensitive to us here in Seattle, the Nordstrom's approach to technical assistance. So we were kind of warm and fuzzy with every individual, and that's fantastic at the scale in which we're operating. But Adam's suggestion to say to moving more towards automation is certainly a way that you can expand your reach. We all have that experience, however, of dealing with customer service through automated formats, there's obviously the plus minus associated with that. You lose some of the direct touch, but in return you get a scaling factor that you just can't do so well using a quote unquote Nordstrom style approach.
Mm-hmm. So that actually relates to one of the questions that came in. I'm wondering if you could both expand on it a little bit. If you could talk, and Adam, you touched on this a little bit already, but what were the points at which you communicated with people that had submitted responses? Were there certain milestones at which you gave people feedback of where they were in the process, things like that? How personalized were those responses? If they were all done manually, was it calling each person, or was there any automation at all? And particularly, if you're working with any sort of contact management software like Salesforce, that does give you an opportunity to do more of that. So I'm wondering if you've been able to take any advantage of that at all thus far, Adam, or if it still is a manual process. So really, what were the kinds of communications? What are the key points in time at which it is important to really respond to the building owners?
Yeah, sure. I can touch on that. So I think it's key to get back to them as soon as possible after they submit their data. Because if you don't, they're going to call you and ask, did you get our data? Did you get my data? Is it okay? Am I in compliance? So you definitely have to send them some sort of official city document stating that they're in compliance. And then, of course, if they're not in compliance, getting that to them as soon as possible as well to make sure that they can fix it quickly as possible. So we want to do that as soon as possible. And then the other place where we you took advantage of our CRM, customer relationship management system, which in Salesforce, was to do what we call building feedback emails. And so basically when the report came out late last year, we sent an email to every single building and said, here's the report, and then here's where you fit into the report. So we divided them into people who are above average, below average, who didn't have Energy Star scores, who had Energy Star scores over 75 but weren't eligible, and so we could really customize and personalize each of those messages to the building and their particular situation. So that was a powerful thing, I think, to move forward with that.
Great. Yeah, that's great to hear, Adam. I think, Adam, you've got a really good system there that we could learn some things from. And honestly, initially the call volume and email volume we had out of the gate was so overwhelming. The notion of being proactive was pretty tough. So we were just struggling to sort of adequately keep up in reactive mode. Over time, that's gotten certainly a bit better, and outbound communications from the city to building owners about status and reminders are more regularized now and rhythmed in relationship to sort of our ability to be able to digest the response that we get. We did still see a large volume of folks calling before there's an April 1st reporting deadline for the city of Seattle. So during the month of March, there's an awful lot of calls to the help desk, people checking to make sure that they're in compliance. So something that was a little more automated and proactive would likely be helpful there. But we are now using the sort of analysis and identifying outliers, finding those 1% to 3% buildings in the high and low energy use that create a database for us that then we can move forward in terms of being more proactive on the data quality side. So we have improved that particular feature over time.
That's great. So I think one comment I'm hearing clearly from both of you is that even though we oftentimes think of this in terms of managing buildings, developing your list of buildings, it really does come down to people, your ability to manage relationships with people, know who's calling in, what their needs are, and how to really keep them properly informed with good feedback and everything. So that's really helpful. I had a question that I think was directed to you, Stan, from Katie Schmidt, which was more about your ability to work kind of in real time with building owners. So she was asking how you were able to do that, and did you actually have access to their direct portfolio manager accounts? Were they sharing their buildings with you via portfolio manager? How are you doing that?
Yeah, Katie, thanks for the question. We're able to get through the city's firewall. We're able to get through with the city's into in customer accounts. We obviously have no disclosure agreement that we offer, so all the access to data that we have are strictly governed under privacy. So we certainly operate under those rules of engagement. But that did allow us, when a customer calls up and says, I have a problem with my account, we could go onto their account with them in real time and troubleshoot particular issues, look for problems that they had. So that was certainly a much more straightforward way for us to help customers directly. Great.
Thanks. And I've actually unmuted everybody at this point, so Katie, if you have any follow-up questions or anything, feel free to toss those in. Let's see, we had another question about, and again, Adam, you answered this to some degree, but any data on the average length of time that was required to help each customer, average call length or time to respond to an email. Stan, I don't think you've had a chance to address that yet. Stan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jason. Could you repeat that? That didn't come across, at least for me.
Oh, sorry. The question was any data on the average length of time that it takes you to service the customer, average call length, number of emails, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah, I was really impressed with Adam's data on average calls. I thought, good grief, why didn't we do that? So I don't have specific data. I think what's important to, I think, for the data that we have in terms of this 800 to 1,500 calls and emails per month, to recognize that those are certainly not all individual buildings. Oftentimes, we will have 4 or 5 or 6 engagements with somebody over a week or 2-week period in order to troubleshoot their problems. So we're finding actually that we get about as much traffic via email as we do by phone. So the transit time for those are a little bit more indeterminate than phone calls. But we have a whole variety of ones that are very short. Am I in compliance? Yes, check, done. And then a lot where folks are spending 20 minutes and 30 minutes on the phone with somebody working through a problem. but I'm sorry, I don't have that aggregated into a good data point.
Okay. Great. All right, and since I have unmuted just about everybody, if you are going to be typing or anything, if you could continue to mute yourself on your end, that would be great. Hearing a little bit of background noise coming through. Question for both of you. You talked a lot about the importance of referrals to utilities and things like that. Is there anything else that is important for people to be aware of as far as how you ultimately help people take action, what they should be doing as far as their next steps? Specifically, did you calculate any potential savings and direct them to specific utility programs, or was it simply that you had a person on the utility side that would then take care of things?
Adam, do you have anything on that one? Yeah.
You know, I saw Marshall was the one that asked that question. Marshall, I got to say, I was hoping you would tell us since you're further down the line. So again, our connection with utility really focused on their data aggregation team, who are not part of the energy efficiency team. So it's definitely a challenge. Again, our focus, at least for the first year and in these interactions, was yes, helping people comply. So, you know, usually they did want to get on and off the phone as quickly as possible. They didn't want to listen to us talk about all the great reasons that they should invest in energy efficiency. So for that reason, we're really focusing on doing that on the back end when we have their data to say, look, this is the results. This is what you're going to do to take action. I will say that we do track whenever we do mention their programs and whenever we do refer people over to ComEd or Peoples, because eventually we would like to make the case, you know, we want to promote this not only to the building owners, but promote it to our utilities as well. Dan, would love to hear from you further on how you, at some point, on how you got the utilities to help fund your health center, since I'm sure that's one thing that we'd all be interested in, but that might be for another time.
Yeah, another webinar. I'll just add, Jason, to that you know, initially they were what I'll call soft referrals. That is, you know, we made sure that people knew that there was incentive programs available from serving utilities, that our market transformation organization had tools and resources that people could go visit if they wanted to figure out more about both capital items, but also operational efficiencies. Most recently, we've begun to do a more rigorous sort of intake referral system for the utility. As we spend more sort of data quality time with building owners, we're getting to understand a little bit more specifically about some of the energy use patterns in their building. And because of that, we're able to to both screen the owner about whether or not they'd be interested in hearing proactively from the utility about programs, but then we can provide a referral to the utility that's a little more qualified than in general. So we're just instituting that system this year, and seeing hopefully that a quality referral system may net more direct opportunities for utility engagement with building owners.
That's great. Yeah, that's really an important link to make. I think we're all trying to figure out how to do that more successfully. So that's something we can all learn from each other, I'm sure. So with that, I don't see any other questions. There's a few things that we can address offline, but I think we've gone through all the ones that came through. One thing that I should have checked with both of you beforehand, any concerns with distributing these PowerPoints to everybody who's on the call?
No, happy to share mine, Jason.
Okay. Adam, are you fine with that?
A little bit of faint light.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. So we will be distributing all of these, and thanks again to both of you. It's great to hear perspectives from two real leaders in this area. So really appreciate all your time today, and hope to talk to all of you again soon then. So thank you all for joining the call today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason.
Great, thank you.